David Allen Miller in Cosmos. Checking on someone about music and other stuff.
Hi everybody, welcome to my new Cosmos interview. I'm delighted to welcome a wonderful human being and a friend of mine, Lee Koonce. I have to admit that Lee and I have not spent a lot of time together. We've almost exclusively spent time together on panels at the New York State Arts Council on the Arts, and at the League of American Orchestras, and at the Mellon Fund, talking about all sorts of issues, particularly around diversity and inclusion and equity. But I've always been just so impressed by him and by his great intelligence and his sensitivity. So I thought it would be really great, particularly at this moment in our nation's evolution, to hear about what he's doing, because he's doing incredible things really to address issues that have really come to the fore recently. So Lee, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you, David. It's good to be talking with you.
It's great to be talking with you. Are you in the city, or are you up in Rochester, or where are you?
Well, yeah, I'm down. My partner and I have a place just right outside of New York City, so that's where we are now.
Oh, great. And you kind of go back and forth, even now, I assume, right? Is that true? Or
Well, nobody's traveling anywhere right now.
oh, so you really aren't in Rochester much now, right?
No. And I live down here with an apartment in Harlem, condo in Harlem, and this place outside of the city. So that's kind of my world.
Oh, beautiful. And just tell us, because you've had this wonderful career, both as a pianist. I know you trained at the highest level as a pianist, both at Oberlin and at Eastman, but also, and particularly as an arts administrator for a number of different organizations. Can you just maybe give us a little bit of the background of your life and career trajectory?
Jeez.
I mean,
my gosh, in only half an hour?
Yeah, you get at least 5 paragraphs. No, I'd love to, I mean, we could talk just about this, but I want to get to the issues of the moment as well.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I think it's relevant. I'm from the south side of Chicago. And as you said, I attended the Oberlin Conservatory of Music for piano performance, and then Eastman School of Music for piano performance. And after Eastman, I moved back home to Chicago and had a job performing and playing and freelancing. And I was a musical director with the Archdiocese of Chicago, and I was this, playing everywhere, just doing all kinds of stuff musically. And I decided I needed to earn a little bit more money, and so I got what I thought was a part-time job at a big consulting firm. And I thought I'd do it for a couple months, pay off my student loans, which were under $3,000. You can imagine that.
Good for
you.
And
so pay off my student loans, and I'd leave the job in 6 months, and it was a temporary job anyway. 10 years later, I was still there at that firm.
That was Anderson Consulting, right? Is that?
It was, which is now Accenture. It's huge.
Big consulting firm.
When I started, there were 500 employees, at least in the Chicago area. Now, internationally, there are over 500,000 employees at that firm. So it's extraordinary. And it was a time of amazing growth, and it was exciting, and it was fun. And 10 years later, I looked up and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything musical. I was still playing a little bit, doing a lot of recitals, accompanying and stuff like that. And I thought, well, I'm on this track. I was a senior manager, getting ready to go into this other range of positions. And I thought, I need to do something musical. I need my life to revolve around music. And at that time, I was really, really lucky to be hired by the Chicago Symphony to be their first director of community relations. And that just kind of set me on this path, using my musical background as well as my administration background to support classical music and with a specialty in the area of community engagement.
And you've had some wonderful jobs in settlement houses, which you probably should just remind us what they are, because they're such an incredibly important part of America's cultural history, particularly New York City. Yeah. But I think some people who aren't from the city may not know about them.
Yeah,
Tell us a little
part
bit
of the settlement movement.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the settlement movement, which actually started in Europe, in England, I think, in the 1800s, and it came to the United States, and it was a movement in which educated, usually middle class, wealthy individuals went into impoverished communities to help provide betterment for the people who were living in those communities. Many of them were in the Jewish ghettos in New York City. And the school that I worked for was the Third Street Music School Settlement. And
It's
it
a
was
very
the
famous one.
first, it's very, very famous.
Uh-huh.
And it was the first settlement, really. I mean, Jane Addams' Hull House did some things in music, but it was the first one to be solely for music. And it was founded, I think, in 1893 in the East Village on the Lower East Side. And at that time, the student population was predominantly Jewish immigrants, mostly Eastern European, and very poor. And so Third Street now is in the East Village, which is really, really hip, and movie stars live there and all that kind of thing now. But it began as this place providing support to that community through music. And those days, Third Street was sending kids from Third Street directly to the New York Philharmonic.
Wow.
In fact, the last Third Street student to go directly from Third Street to the New York Philharmonic died about 10 years ago. So there was this pathway, and David Manis, who was the principal, who concert master of the New York Philharmonic, was also the executive director of Third Street Music School Settlement.
Oh, fascinating.
So it was this fascinating world where they were had social workers, they provided baths for the students, they provided jobs for the students, and they taught them music at the same time. So it was an extraordinary model, and I was very attracted to that model, bringing music to communities. And so then that became my life after the Chicago Symphony.
And that position there that you had was as what?
I was the executive director for 8
were?
years there. Yeah.
For how long? For
8 years.
8 years. How wonderful.
Yeah.
And then
It was an extraordinary experience.
yeah, and then just fill in from that point until where you are now. You have this really fascinating position you took only a couple of years ago. Is that right? Or how many years have you been with Gateways?
Yeah, I'm now the president and artistic director of the Gateways Music Festival. But my affiliation with Gateways has been since about 1995 or 1996, when I joined the board of Gateways. And I joined the board when Henry Fogel and I, Henry was the president of the Chicago Symphony at that time, brought a group of 5 Gateways musicians to Chicago for a 3-week residency. And the residency was amazing. That's a whole nother story, but it was just incredible. And after that, I joined the board. And when the founder retired in 2009, she appointed me the chair of this new committee that she created, to keep the organization going, called the Artistic Programs Committee. They were all Eastman grads at that time. And our job was to build the festival. It was really very, very, very tiny then. It's still small, but very tiny. And so we've, significantly grown the festival to the point that in 2009, we weren't able to fill all the seats in the orchestra. We had to bring in ringers. And in 2019, last year, we turned away over 200 musicians.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So
tell us, because you haven't told us yet. What is the mission? What is the mission of Gateways? I want to know. Yeah, a little.
Yeah.
About it.
The mission of the Gateways Music Festival is to connect and support professional classical musicians of African descent, and enlighten and inspire communities through the power of performance. And so it's this 6 days, 125 musicians, and more than 50 performances in the community of Rochester, New York, every summer. And now we're actually moving to the fall. And it is this really life-changing experience for the musicians.
And when you say you're moving to the fall, you're expanding to the fall, or you're just moving it out of the summer because of the COVID challenges? Or
well, we're moving to the fall, and we made this decision last year. We made the decision for 2 reasons. One is that, the ability for the Gateways musicians to interact with young people is so important. But they're out of school in the summer. So we can do some, but we certainly can't do as much as we could do in the fall. We also can't interact with Eastman students in the summer. So our plan was to move to the fall, which was when the festival originally took place. And the other thing is that we want to be able to do the festival and then go on the road and tour. And as you know, almost every hall in the country is dark in August. There's nothing going on in August.
Sure.
So we needed to be at a time of the year where we could really just jump on a bus after that last concert and hit the road.
Oh, wonderful.
So that's the plan.
That's exciting. So as of now, you're still hoping to be semi-live, or is it going to be totally virtual, or it's just hard to know? Or
Yeah, it's
we're all
hard to
having
know.
this problem. I can tell you,
Yeah.
this Albany Symphony,
know
where
you are.
every week it
I know.
changes. We're still working. Yeah.
And it depends on whether Eastman's going to be in session and whether the Rochester City Schools are going to be in session, because this year was to be a smaller festival, a chamber music focused festival. But it might need to be virtual because we just don't know.
And am I right in remembering that while Gateways has always taken place at Eastman, it hasn't been officially connected to the school, and now you have a role at the school, which is quite wonderful since you're a distinguished alumnus of the school?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, Gateways has been located in Rochester since 1995. It was founded in 1993 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And when the founder, Arminta Adams Hummings, joined the faculty at Eastman in 1995, she brought the festival with her. So it was not really affiliated with Eastman, but Eastman helped out a little bit here and there. And as the festival grew and I came on board, a partnership, a formal partnership was formed between Eastman and Gateways. So we're now the Gateways Music Festival in association with Eastman School of Music. Eastman provides some financial support. Eastman provides all the space. They provide office space, performance space, but Gateways remains an independent 501c3 organization that has this affiliation with
There's a relationship, and you now have a relationship personally yourself with a role at the school. Is that right? Or
I do. I'm actually employed technically by the University of Rochester and Eastman School of Music, and I am leased out, which is actually a human resources term, which I just learned. I know,
you
but
haven't gotten rid of that term yet?
No,
my goodness.
leased out. It is a formal human resources term I've learned.
Dear.
To the Gateways Music Festival, 85% of my time is devoted to the festival, and the remaining 15% I serve as senior advisor to the dean. And my portfolio on that part of my job is really almost exclusively issues related to Eastman and the community, community of Rochester, and specifically music programs in the community.
Oh, that's beautiful. I have to confess, I feel terrible. I had hoped to come last summer, but my summer got very complicated. Right. But at least our executive director, Anna Kuwabara, came up for at least something I know to see, because Gateways has only been 6 days traditionally, right? Is that the length of the festival? And she came up and she was so moved by it and thought it was just such an inspiring thing. And as you mentioned, I mean, it culminates, or I know that you said this summer is going to be about chamber music, but in the past it's culminated with a full orchestra concert with the entire group, I guess, right? I know my dear colleague Michael Morgan has done that, and you've had really famous soloists, and but it's quite a unique offering. So,
it is. Can I just go back and say, Anna and I are friends from my days at the Chicago Symphony. We were colleagues there.
Sure.
And Anna, she attended a lot of the concerts. She even came to the Brass Collective gave a concert at the Memorial Art Gallery in Rochester, and they said it was their most well-attended performance they've ever done of anything. I mean, we were turning away people.
Fantastic.
It was amazing.
Well, I'm
Absolutely
sure that
has
to do with your expertise in getting the word out. It's been a little bit of a secret until not that many years ago, right? I mean, it's been going on for these many years, but many of us, even in New York State, weren't even aware of it until you took charge. So that's wonderful. That's great.
And that's because there's a reason for that. Our founder, Arminta Adams Hummings, she's one of the Juilliard 100. She's an African-American classical pianist, one of the great pianists of the world. But what opportunities were there for a black classical pianist in 1950? She founded the festival, and she could care less about marketing or communication or anything like that. Not important to her.
Certain founders are like that. I know a few founders who are the same.
She could care less. It was about the music. It was
Right.
about the musicians. So
Understandably, yeah, I guess.
Gateway stayed under this, bushel for a long, long
Yeah,
time.
well, it's
And
great
so
you've
our
allowed
work
it.
is how do we get us out of that,
You've allowed it to shine, and for all
Yeah,
of our friends here at the Albany Symphony, Rochester's right down the road,
that's
and
right.
so whenever you're back up and live, we should all be coming out. August is a good time. We don't, we have certainly have a lot
Yeah.
going on in the capital region in the summer, but that's such a unique and wonderful offering, and New York State is just such a great place to traverse when one can traverse it. I've had such great experiences going out
And through
west,
the
as we
Finger
say.
Lakes. You have to go through the Finger Lakes, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. Yeah. So that actually, sort of dovetails with, to a certain extent, this moment, and it's not a surprise to anybody in the field or who's been tracking the classical music field, as I guess it's called, although I don't really like the term classical, but that we, like so many industries, have been struggling and need to struggle a lot harder with these issues of how to make sure that we are more reflective of the societies we serve and more diverse and more equitable, and that black people and all people of color, Latinx people, are welcomed in. And strangely, maybe not strangely, I mean, you have a very different, probably, perspective on that than I would, even though I think many of us have felt like we're not exclusionary. I think that the field has been so. And I think this is a really important time, not just the last 2 months, but we've been wrestling with these issues now for 5 or 10 years at the League of American Orchestras. They've been very laser focused on it. The Mellon Mellon Foundation has been very focused on it, and a lot of the institutions are really trying to find answers, albeit much too slowly. We have a wonderful EDI task force here at the Albany Symphony, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and have really begun to try to make some systemic changes. But from your very central location, thinking about these issues for so many years and working on these issues for so many years, what can you tell us about what has to happen and where we are? Or maybe that's backwards. Where we are and what has to happen. I should say it that way.
I'm certainly not going to pretend to be an expert on all of this. There definitely are people who are experts on where we are and what needs to happen. It seems to me, though, that certainly there have been significant periods in the history of orchestras in which they've separated themselves from communities, not just black communities, but from all communities. A time when orchestras were for the elite, where it was a way to set ourselves apart. So the society people found that those orchestras, many of the orchestras in the country, and so almost by definition, they were these elite exclusionary organizations. And I think it's been really challenging for American orchestras to just understand this concept of relevancy, that we belong to the entire community. I mean, one of the things I admire about you so much, David, in Albany, is your commitment to contemporary music and American composers. Well, those are fighting words in a whole lot of orchestras, as you know.
Really? What's wrong with those people?
It's true. So we, in orchestras, we've kind of looked at the world as something different from us, and so I think this issue of how we become relevant, how we remain relevant, has been a struggle for us for a long, long time. And so then it's exacerbated by issues related to the very peculiar issue of race in the United States. And there were times in our history when black people were not allowed to play in symphony orchestras. Black people weren't even allowed to go to the concerts. And so in those days, in many black communities, black concert series were set up of their own in their own communities. I'm from the south side of Chicago. The National Association of Negro Musicians was founded in 1918. They had their own orchestra, their own concert series, their own recital series. And so there's a separate but not equal kind of system going on. And so that was a time when there were many black musicians in the United States who were started out on their instruments or singing in the church or in public schools. And so there's a separate but equal society, and many of them could not get a job in a major symphony orchestra because they just weren't allowed to. And so we fast forward to today. Um, Certainly, more black musicians are being produced, and fine musicians out there. There are lots of them. But one of the things we're lacking is that large influx of black children learning how to play a musical instrument. So to get one black player in your symphony, or one black player in the New York Phil, or one black player in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, there should be a million little black kids learning how to play the clarinet to get to the level of your orchestra. But there might be 500 across the country. The pool is just too small. There was a time when almost every school in the United States provided instrumental music instruction, and so it's because of that. It's also because of the change in, which I think is related, in the black church, from kind of traditional hymnody and anthems to almost exclusively gospel music. And so this whole notion of classical music, of orchestral music, has become less and less relevant to many folks in the black community. So, what? My grandmother never listened to that. My mother never listened to that. I don't listen to that. That's not a part of our life. And so orchestras have, in my mind, I think, and I'm kind of going all over the place, I know.
No, it's
one of the most important things I think orchestras could have done and need to do is not go in schools and teach kids, but to make the music exciting, to make the music relevant, to make people want to hear the music. And what we've done is just the opposite. We've held it precious and close to us, and we've kept everybody out. And so I think that I don't have the solution for it, I don't have the answers for it, but this is such a time for American orchestras. It is a critical time.
Do you think there are any other, dare I say, accelerants? Because I know we all have the best intentions, and we all want to make our not we all, but certainly I would hope most of us want to make our institutions more inclusive, make the stage more inclusive, make the staff more inclusive, invite more people in. Are there certain things we as orchestras can and should be doing that we aren't really doing yet, in addition to what you suggest?
Yeah, I think there are, and you and I had met first, I think, on the many convenings from the Mellon Foundation and other panels that we've been on, and I think that there's been so much talk about what should happen in American orchestras, and for whatever reason, it's just not happening. So, playing diverse repertoire to begin with, diversifying the stage and the staff and it's everything, and that has not really happened at a significant way. And maybe even more serious to me is, this conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So even when we've gotten to the diversity piece and we've gotten our one player or our two players of African descent in an orchestra, we are really behind in creating an environment that is equitable and that is inclusive, and black musicians and everybody else who's not white feels like they belong. One of our Gateways musicians is the principal oboe at the Nashville Symphony Orchestra, Titus Underwood, and I don't mind saying this. And in Bloomberg News just did a story about him.
I saw it, yeah. Uh-huh.
The story that he tells is horrific and horrifying.
Yeah.
Not unique.
Yeah.
So if you put a black musician in that kind of environment, well, yes, we have diversity, but we have failed in equity and inclusiveness. We failed. So I think that, yes, we've got to figure out the diversity piece because we're really behind in that, diversity in the repertoire, diversity in musicianship, but we also have to begin working much more seriously on equity and inclusion and making musicians feel as though they belong, and relevancy to communities, all communities.
Amen. That's right. Yeah, and I must say that the Mellon Foundation, Susan Fader, and the League of American Orchestras, Jesse Rosen, have been really, they've become so laser focused on this, and in a way, they've been such inspirational forces because they've pretty much said, yes, we know you all have the best intentions, but that's not enough. There needs to be systemic change. And I guess, being an optimist, I feel like this moment now may just be there's been enough talk, there've been enough ideas proffered. We're working on a lot of different things. We're working on education and community engagement and these pathway programs in the big cities, and you're doing amazing work in Rochester and elsewhere. And but now, as you say, I think that all the sort of mainstream institutions in the communities are finally beginning to realize that the future is just, there's no excuse for us not solving this now. It's gone on way too long.
I agree.
And I must say that you're right about the repertoire, and we've had wonderful projects. Whenever I think about Rochester, I always think about the great Frederick Douglass, with whom I share a birthday, who spent most of his adult life in Rochester. And I guess I'm 2/3 of the way through that great relatively new biography of his that David Blight wrote. I'm at about page 520, so I only got 250 pages to go. But it's been fascinating to read about how visionary he was coming out of the Civil War. I finally got through the Civil War in the book, thank God. And how there was a moment there early in Reconstruction when there really was talk about true equality. And then, of course, it evaporated for 150 years, and now we're having to re-argue the same things that abolitionists like Douglass were arguing so long ago. So in a way it's tragic, but in another way it's maybe hopeful, because I think that we're so much better equipped now as people and as communities and as institutions and as a society, at least in enlightened places, to really try to fix this terrible set of endemic problems. So in a way, I'm optimistic. You left out one of the more interesting parts of your biography. I saw somewhere that when you were at Oberlin, you were one of the few people who survived the double major. I guess at Oberlin, you can either be in the conservatory or you can be in the college, the famous college. Right. And certain people in the conservatory, because they want to be intellectuals, double major, and they do a degree in both schools. And you, I see, have a degree in Spanish literature. Is that right?
I do.
How was that part of your past? I'm so interested in that. I'm a big fan of Spanish literature too. Of Unamuno and Lorca and Pablo Neruda and all those guys. Yeah. So how did that happen?
Yeah, Oberlin was one of the first colleges to have a double degree program, and first conservatories to have a double degree program. And my parents were not musicians. And so this notion that I would go to college to study the piano was beyond my father. He never accepted it, actually. Even
very wise man.
He for one, I wasn't going to his alma mater. That was, I think, one issue. But mainly, he thought, we sent you guys to these great schools, and you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be an engineer, you could do a teacher. Why in the world would you want to play the piano? And so I never, and for him, he was a minister. For him, the one advantage to me playing the piano was that I could play in church for him if he ever needed a pianist.
It's valuable.
Very beneficial to him. So I felt like when I went to college, I had to prove to him that I could do something more than play the piano.
Oh, I see.
And so really, it was about my insecurity.
And that's so too bad. I'm sorry.
I know. But it's also...
Did you read some good books, though, at least?
But it also said it was about, I'm interested in so many other things. If I had done piano, I wanted to be an architect. So I actually started out in English as an English major and a piano major. And then I realized, going home and reading 6,000 pages and writing, 12 papers a week and then practicing for 6 hours a day, it's not a recipe that worked for me. It works for some people, but not for me. And my mother's family is Colombian. In fact, I'm actually wearing a Colombian T-shirt today. I don't know if you can see that.
That's great.
My Colombian flag colors.
Fantastic. Oh, so you have Spanish. You're an indigenous speaker, is that right, or a native speaker?
I wouldn't say I'm a native speaker. And my family is from a Colombian island, but it's an island off the coast of Colombia. So it's a very, very unusual place. But so because that was part of my background, and I'm very interested in Spanish literature, I decided to change my major to Spanish literature. Actually went to Bogota to go to college for a year, a year and a half.
Wow.
And I focused really on Latin American literature because that's what was really of interest to me. And so that's how the Spanish degree came about.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
So at home, did she speak Spanish to you and
he
your?
did
Yes,
not
you did not.
because it's hard to be a bilingual household
When one
if both
parent doesn't.
parents. Yep.
Yeah, that's true. How many siblings you have?
I have three
Siblings?
sisters,
Three sisters.
yeah,
Oh, how nice! Wow. The one
all
other question.
younger.
The one other question I wanted to ask you. I mean, there are many questions I want to ask you, but I figure we've probably gone over my usual half hour. But I'm so happy to have you talk to me. The other question I really wanted to understand is, you've had this wonderfully varied, very high level career, both as a consultant, but then as an arts administrator. And I remember I saw you just as you were accepting the Gateways Festival job, which was, from the way you even described it to me, it was a bit of a gamble because you're, in a way, if I understand correctly, their first fully professional, really expert executive director.
First paid staff.
What caused you to feel that that was the direction you wanted to go in? And given where we are, what role do you feel the Gateways Festival plays or can play in these questions around inclusion and diversity, etc.?
You know, I mentioned that I had, done this work at Gateways since 2009 when the founder retired. So when I was at Third Street Music School Settlement, my, nighttime gig was Gateways.
You were already
I
working
mean,
there. That's what
I was already
tell
doing
me.
it. And I've been doing Gateways now for more than 10 years in this role. First as the chair of that committee, and now as the president and artistic director. And I knew that Gateways could not go much further unless I was able to devote more time to it. And so our board chair, who happened to be a senior vice president at the University of Rochester, made the partnership happen so that I could be brought on as a full-time staff person, because we both knew that Gateways could not grow further without building the capacity. So that's how that happened.
And you feel that going forward, the role that it plays remains critical. I mean, I'm trying to remember who it was who declared, now we've succeeded in fully solving all race issues, since we obviously have not done that. Do you feel like it will always have a role, or will there be a time when you feel like it won't? Or
Yeah, I feel like Gateways definitely has a role and a place. I'm not sure if you noticed, but in our mission statement, the word diversity appears nowhere. It has never been a part of Gateway's or mission statement to create diversity in classical music. It has always been to create a safe, welcoming, nurturing, affirming environment for Black musicians. And when Gateways musicians come to Gateways for those 6 days, they don't want to leave. They don't want to go back to the world that they mostly have to live in. Michael Morgan says it's the biggest family reunion he's ever been to, by people who are related through music, not by blood. It is the place that they feel safe. It's a place that it may be the only place in their life where it can actually be all about the music, because it doesn't have to be about them being Black. It doesn't have to be about race. It can be all about the music, and it's the only place in their lives where that is true. If you're the only Black player in the New York Philharmonic or the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, how everybody interacts with you is about race. And it's got to constantly be at top of mind. And if you've heard Titus's video, and seeing that video, I'll guarantee you that is not a unique story. It's horrible. It's not unique. And so Gateways musicians flee to Gateways So is there a place for gateways? Will there be a place for gateways? For a long time, yes. There will be a need for a place like gateways.
Well, that's very, very eloquently said, and probably a great place to stop. So thank you so much, and thanks for all you do. And I hope that we out there through the field can really begin to make the field feel more like gateways in a way. Obviously, it can never fully feel like gateways, but more feel like that kind of inclusive place where no one feels like they're viewed through a racial lens of any kind or any other kind of lens. And that's something that I think we in the field all can and should aspire to. Yeah. So thank you, Lee. It's great to catch up with you.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate
really
your taking time to chat and just keep doing the great things you're doing and stay safe and healthy. And I hope the fall festival unrolls in a meaningful way, whether virtual or real, however we're allowed to do it. We're all struggling with that, but I'm sure you'll find a great way to do it. And I hope in future seasons that all of our friends in Albany and the Capital Region will make their way over to see you, because it'd be wonderful. And I'll be sure to be there.
That'd be terrific. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Lee. Great to talk to you.